In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Simone and Gerhard Mathangani.
The college football season rolls on in the SEC. A lot of drama on the field that we'll get to, but also a lot of drama off the field as well. LSU head coach Brian Kelly out. You see the record, 34-14, but another loss this year means they were out of the college football playoff, and he is now out of a job, one of the highest buyouts ever. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. Patrick, you called this last week. We were talking to Chessa Boucher, and you were asking her a question. If Brian Kelly, this game would be the next James Franklin. You suffer a game in a loss that maybe where the crowd noise and the fan noise gets a little bit louder than what's going on in the football program, and another coach out of a job.
Yeah, and I feel like it's just the telltale of what a couple of weeks difference it can make, really. Yep. I mean, I know a few weeks ago there were some rumors that Brian Kelly might go and take the Penn State job, and then everyone shot that down right away and be like, no, he's committed to building a program here. Well, 3 weeks later, Brian Kelly, as you mentioned, does not have a job anymore. I mean, it's just crazy how fast your world can flip upside down in this league. But, I mean, coming into this season, this had to be the year for him with all the talent, the talent coming back. You had Garrett Nussmeier come back, and you just didn't get it done. And it's just been a telltale of Brian Kelly's tenure here at LSU. He did great in his first year. He got that extension. And since then, I mean, he didn't finish a season with less than 2 losses. Or less than 3 losses.
Correct. And the storylines coming into this season were, number one, he could not win a big opening game to start the season. And seemingly he did so against Clemson on the road. Then that win got watered down week after week after week as Clemson really struggled on the road. Then it was, could you win some of the big games? And that's where the problems were, because I think a lot of people, if you're just watching outside of the football space, you look at his record and you're like, you fired a guy that won 34 of his 48 games.
But you look at that second there. AP ranked teams 5-11. I mean, that's just, you're not going to win in the SEC when it's like that. I mean, especially not at LSU when the expectations are as high as ever.
Yeah, and if you need to know anything about LSU, Ed Orgeron, Les Miles, Nick Saban, all won national championships within the first 4 years. Ed Orgeron ended up getting fired by this program. So this program has the demands of this program are so insanely high, and the fact that where they're located. I mean, there's so much talent right there. We talk about the Florida job, but LSU. I mean, there's literally, I think per capita, if you put like a 200-mile square around Baton Rouge, most NFL players, or a lot of NFL players, most by per capita, come from that area. So recruiting, you should be able to recruit to LSU just fine, and they want to win. And next thing you know, he's now out of a head coaching job. What I find interesting is just the way all this is happening. This is now 3 SEC jobs, and I believe 7 or 8 Power 4 jobs that are now open.
Unreal.
Before Halloween. Before Halloween, these jobs are open.
This is probably going to be commonplace now because of the transfer portal. Only one window from January 2nd to the 16th, and you've got to fire. If you want to make a change, you got to fire these guys early on in the season. You got to have a short leash with them, so that way you can do your national search and get a coach in time for that transfer portal to have the right amount of time to be able to evaluate the guys that you already have and then add some new guys that you want.
I'll ask you to put that graphic up one more time, because I want to ask you a question. I don't know if you did it this way on purpose, but left to right, is that your ranking as far as the way that these jobs are?
I did it by
chronological order. No, but honestly,
it definitely does.
Yeah, as I look at it, that's the order as far as like, hey, LSU to me is the number 1 job, Florida's the number 2 job, Arkansas is the number 3 job, and I know that's just the order chronologically. That's the order in which all those coaches were now fired. So it's going to be a really interesting development as this moves forward, and we'll talk about that a whole lot more. Our topics for today, we will include both Brian Kelly and the offensive coordinator. Word out today, offensive coordinator Joe Sloan also out as well. Texas escapes in Starkville. I have no idea how.
No idea how
I'm
they won.
still scratching my head about that one. And poor Mississippi State, they are just struggling right now.
They still covered.
They did. They covered. They probably should have won the ball game up 17 in the fourth. But we will talk about that. Also, Vanderbilt continues to rewrite history. Another win over a top 15 program. They are now in the top 10. And the new AP poll is out. Vanderbilt, several others in the house as well in that top 25 ranking. We will break all that down, and we will do so with our guests. Lots to talk about with all three of these gentlemen. Roger Wallace, who covers the Texas Longhorns, get a big win. We will
to stay in Tupelo, Mississippi.
Yes, we will get everything from his stay in Tupelo, Mississippi, to the just unbelievable win for the Longhorns in that matchup. Also talk with Corey Curtis. He has been telling us, we have to give him his flowers. He has been telling us this entire time this Vanderbilt team was legit. They continue to prove it week after week. And Brian Brinkley from Oklahoma City, of course, the Thunder dropped the banner about this time last week, and then now the Oklahoma Sooners still trying to find some light after losing that game to Ole Miss this past week. But let's go back to Brian Kelly, because we've talked a lot about just the way college football is right now and where we stand right now. Brian Kelly out. I read a report from NOLA.com that there was a heated exchange between Brian Kelly and the athletic director, Scott Woodward. Keep in mind, Scott Woodward was the athletic director at Texas A&M.
For Jimbo Fisher.
So
how does this guy still have a job? Can we talk about this real quick?
That's the thing.
This guy is responsible for the two largest buyouts ever in college football, and ongoing $130 million worth of buyouts.
Yes, more than $70 million for Jimbo Fisher, which is the highest of all time. And now this buyout for Brian Kelly, north of $54 million, making it the second highest buyout of all time, both hired by the same gentleman. And you're right. I have no idea how Woodward still keeps his job after all of this. I know LSU fans are really passionate about what goes on the field. I think you have to be passionate about what's going on upstairs as well, because it just doesn't look good for Woodward.
Look, I mean, I'm not really surprised that Brian Kelly had a heated exchange with him, because, one, he's just a fiery guy. I mean, we saw it about a month ago when he was, flaming all the reporters, asking about the offense. Well, maybe the reporters were right all along. I mean, we've talked about it all season. What is this offense doing? Why does this offense not look like the LSU caliber offense that we're accustomed to? And he tried to, just play damage control. Oh, no. Why would you ask something like that? We won the game. Yeah, you won that game. And then you lost two straight to end your tenure at LSU.
So, LSU, and that offense, as you talked about, I got some numbers here. The 124th ranked offense in the country. 124th in rushing, just about 100 yards per game, 91st in red zone efficiency. And there you see some of the hard line stats there as well. 25.5 points per game. That is 12th in the SEC. The back end of the SEC as far as yards are considered as well. And we just talked about the rushing yardage, last in the SEC. And you're just not used to that. You're not used to that with this program.
No.
This program puts offensive linemen and running backs in the NFL consistently every year. You add on top of that you have Gerhard Nussmeier, and you mentioned it when we started this show, the only 4,000-yard passer for a year ago that was coming back to college football was Gerhard Nussmeier. And whether it was injuries or just the lack of synergy with the offensive coordinator, he just really never looked on track for an extended period of time.
Right, and I feel like you've got to go back to, 3 years ago now when he was the starter for a year at LSU, and then Jaden Daniels came in and took over the role, and then it went back to Gerhard Nussmeier. Right. And it almost feels like, should we have seen this coming? I mean, you had Jaden Daniels come in from Arizona State, which that just, I didn't even mean to bring that up, because that just leads me into my next point. Brian Kelly had all this talent and didn't do anything with it. Nothing. Like, he had Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
And literally, what they have to show for it is what? Just a
3 bowl wins.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, at least he went 3-0 in bowl games.
Yeah. But this is a team that, especially now with the playoff being 12 teams, I think that's even a bigger point, because Nick Saban won it when it was the BCS and it was just 2 teams got in, and then Ed Orgeron won it when it was a 4-team playoff. And 2 games, they ended up winning it. They have one of the greatest seasons of all time.
Greatest rosters of all time, too.
Oh, no doubt. And I compared this year's roster. There was a lot of similarities to what they had in 2019. Dynamic receivers on the outside, an incredible defense and a quarterback that's seasoned, that's ready to go. You had Joe Burrow in 2019, you had Garrett Nussmeier, and it just never really got on track there. 5-3 this year, so once again, no playoff. And barring a miracle, the playoff is completely out of contention for this football team. And I mean, they still could lose a couple more games. They still have a bye week this week. Then they have Alabama. Then they play a hungry Arkansas team, and then they play Oklahoma to end the season. So the losing can essentially continue for this football squad.
I mean, you go into that Alabama game. Alabama's off this week as well, and they get a much-needed bye after playing 5 straight very tough games. So Alabama's going to be rested and ready to go. That's probably going to be a close game. Arkansas plays everyone close. They just come out on the losing end every time. So, I mean, that's going to be a close game. And then the one to end of the year, that's also going to be a close game. So, I mean, it feels like a wasted year for sure for LSU. I mean, all of these preseason expectations, I bought into the hype. I named them my SEC champion.
Right.
And yet again, it just proves that Brian Kelly was just not able to get the job done. I don't know who's happier right now, LSU fans that he's gone or Notre Dame fans, because Marcus Freeman ended up being a little bit better than Brian Kelly.
Yep. And I literally just saw where about 30 minutes ago where Marcus Freeman actually came out with a statement after.
Oh, really?
I think he was just asking his normal weekly press conference about it, and say, he obviously expressed how said you don't want anybody to lose their job, the persons and their families and the people affected, especially somebody that at the end of the day, we're always rooting for Coach Kelly. He gave me an opportunity here when he was here at Notre Dame. He's always rooting for him, but this is this profession, and we've chosen this profession, and we know it's a result of choosing this profession. So I mean, it's all the main talking points that you would say, but no, you're right. I think that there's a lot of people who are saying probably the real star coach on that staff was not Brian Kelly, and Brian Kelly parlayed it to the LSU job, but Marcus Freeman has done nothing but basically win, took his team to the national championship, close to a natty, if it wasn't for for Ohio State. So the question now is, of course, he doesn't think about it right now because he's going to be $54 million. But the question now is that what's next for Brian Kelly? Like, where does he go from here?
It's so weird because I feel like I've heard Penn State fans be like, oh, we want Brian Kelly.
Right.
If you're Penn State, and I'm going to go off here for a second.
Okay, I like it.
If you're Penn State, why would you want to hire the Nick Saban of James Franklin in Brian Kelly? Oh, you couldn't win a big game with James Franklin. Oh, here we go. Why don't you go ahead and take Brian Kelly, who ever since you could go back to his Notre Dame days and he still couldn't win a big game.
That's right.
Yeah, let's just throw him in here and see if we can, change it up or anything.
The Nick Saban of James Franklin's is great.
He's the Nick Saban of James Franklin's.
That's right.
I don't know how else to put it. The guy cannot win big games. You just fired a guy that cannot win a big game.
Right.
What are we doing?
No, I'm right there with you. And I think that and the only reason, in my opinion, if you would hire Brian Kelly is if you think that he's a better cultural fit, because it really never felt like he fit at LSU.
There's no accent.
No.
In Penn State.
No, there isn't. There isn't.
You can't just fake a Southern accent. I mean, maybe get on a horse and buggy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I'm right there with you. I don't know where Penn State goes from here. I have an idea where LSU is going to try to go from here. It's the same place that Florida and Arkansas and all the other places we'll go to. So the question now is not only what's next for Brian Kelly, what's next for LSU, and who do you think is at the top of that board, so to speak?
I feel like it's got to be a guy right up the road in Lane Kiffin.
Yep.
Now I think, but here's the thing though. If Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss keep on winning, it is a major L for all of these programs that want to target him. And I mean, especially Florida, because Florida has been linked to him pretty much ever since the season started. Everyone knew that this would probably be Billy Napier's last year. But with how the transfer portal is set up now, January 2nd to the 16th.
Right.
At this rate, I would be shocked if Ole Miss wasn't in the college football playoff. I would honestly be shocked.
Absolutely.
If they don't make it, that's more impressive than if they actually made it.
Correct. Yes.
Because that would take the wheels falling off. And I think next week they've got South Carolina and then Citadel after.
Yeah.
If Ole Miss makes the playoff, Lane Kiffin's going to have to coach at least on December 16th or whenever it starts.
Yes. Yeah.
You cannot, even if he goes on the first round, that's still going to be, all right, he's going to get on campus around December 18th.
Uh-huh.
That is nowhere near enough time for you to be able to evaluate everyone and make the necessary transfer portal. I don't care if he's the transfer portal king.
Right.
That's still just not enough time.
It's really not. And that's kind of the quagmire, a lot of these early firings.
Yeah.
Because the people that you are going after, all the good ones, are getting ready for the playoffs.
Right.
And if you're going into the NFL, the season doesn't end until late December, early January. And so it's hard to get those guys as well. So the best you can do is get a guy maybe in the group of 5 that their season ends early or a bowl game is early. Maybe a guy like John Summerall and a few others that have had, lots of talk about them going into the year. And you have to hope they don't make the playoff as well. So it's a really fine line here because you can't wait too long because, as you said, that transfer portal will close mid-January.
Yeah.
And if let's just say Lane has his team in the semifinals or in the national championship game, you
that's
won't be able to
passed.
talk. Yes, and the door's already closed on all of that as well. So still so much to get into as far as LSU's next coaching candidate for that program. Obviously, all eyes will be on that in college football. We will also talk Ole Miss, and we have 3 special guests on the program here today as well. Keep it right here. Southeast Sports Plus continues after the break. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus. We are coming off an incredible week of college football games all across the SEC. Perhaps one of the most entertaining games was in Starkville, Mississippi, as the Texas Longhorns go on the road. It's a very tough place to play, Patrick, and they got a big win over Cowbell and them Bulldogs.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're gonna bring Roger here in a second, but I'm sure his ears are probably still ringing from Starkville.
He made the trip from Austin, Texas, to Tupelo, Mississippi to Starkville. Roger, it's good to see you all back in one piece, coming back from an airline that none of us had heard of. But you made it back home with the win. Let's just talk what this win means for this program. The way that they were able to get the win. Last week, a game against Kentucky, 16-13. If you're just looking at the scoreboard, you're not very impressed. But the way that they were able to get it done against the Wildcats, and then this week, the way they're able to get it done, erasing a 17-point deficit to be able to get the win this week. What did you make of their performance there in Starkville?
Yeah, you said it. Get it done. Just find a way. I mean, Tennessee, they had to escape Starkville with an overtime win as well. We go back to Lexington. Ole Miss had to escape with a one-score win as well from Lexington. Somehow Texas doesn't seem to get that benefit of the doubt perception nationally of escaping with a win. It's always about how they do it, what they look like. Why aren't they better offensively? What's wrong with Arch Manning? What's wrong with Sark's play calling? What was wrong with the defense suddenly against Mississippi State? But they did. So they go 3-1 on this Odyssey. They will play Saturday Vanderbilt at home, first time at home in 42 days. I had a hunch it was going to be a tough game. Mississippi State, what happened against Florida? Blake Shapen, he played against Texas when he was at Baylor. He didn't play last year when he was at Mississippi State. He was hurt. I had a hunch that they would play really well. They had a couple of former Longhorns, actually 3 that were very productive. Brendan Thompson, Jere Bledsoe, and Darren Gillette all had big moments in the game. Jeff Lebby and his ties, opposite Texas. But eventually, we say it every week, you just don't want to be that team. Texas was that team against Florida. They avoided being that team against Kentucky and Mississippi State, and now a tougher stretch to close the season with 4 games.
Absolutely. And at the beginning of the season and towards the middle of the season, Arch Manning really took a lot of lumps as far as the way he played. But for those that are, I say what's the old saying that the energy, like whenever things are going well, needs to be the same as when things are not going well. I have to give him his credit. More than 300 passing yards. He looked sensational before going out, obviously with a concussion. What did you make of his performance all the way up until that moment, and where he stands now, and where the program stands now offensively as they go into, as you mentioned, a gauntlet of a stretch here, starting with Vanderbilt?
Yeah, and again, just to update you, Sark said he did not practice today. He's in protocol. That takes all the decision-making out of anybody except doctors' hands, and we don't know. So Matthew Caldwell took the 1 snaps. KJ Lacey took the 2 snaps, and, that's where we are. But obviously that was a big moment for Arch, what he did, especially in the fourth quarter, coming up with big plays. Even the play where he got injured was a scramble down to the 5-yard line in overtime, took a huge hit, hit the turf, and he was done for the rest of the game. But I think, and he even, when he walked off the field after being in the medical tent, he was pumping his fists, and it was funny. Caldwell said, I told Arch I wish he could have finished it for the way he played, maybe a little window into what Matthew Caldwell's all about. But I think Arch is, regardless of, if he can play this week or not, that was a big moment for him going forward to do it in the fourth quarter, to come up with big chunk plays. That throw off schedule deep to Ryan Wingo in the fourth quarter was huge to set up a touchdown. Made some great touch passes to Parker Livingston, 2 different touchdowns, 1 to Emmett Mosley. So big confidence builder, and when you know it, right when that happens, he gets hurt, and we don't know his status. But again, this is a team that has found ways to win in different ways, and this time it was with the offense and then 4 straight stops on defense down the stretch against the Mississippi State team that was, they were moving up and down the field at will in the second half on them.
Yeah. And Mississippi State's offense really, really strong going into it. This reminds me a little bit of what happened last year when Quinn Ewers goes down. Arch took advantage of the opportunities. For the world that does not know much about Matthew Caldwell, what are some of his traits? Obviously, the box score speaks for itself: 1 for 1, 10 yards, and a touchdown. But what are his strengths and some of the ways that they'll utilize him if he's the guy that has to play at least next week?
Yeah, he's from Auburn, Alabama. He started at Jacksonville State. Then he went to Troy, started 5 games at Troy last year, and then was looking for a different landing spot. And I think Sark really wanted a veteran. He has 2 young guys, KJ Lacey, I mentioned, the freshman, and a sophomore, Trey Owens, from the Houston area. But, I mean, he's not had a season here where his quarterback hasn't missed a start. So I think he felt more comfortable if he could find a veteran. And Caldwell came in, and he came in the Florida game on that last drive when they were down 8 points, and Arch's helmet came off, so he had to come out for a play. And all Caldwell does is sprint out there, take a snap, and throw a dart to Ryan Wingo for a 26-yard gain, and then, gives way to Arch. So his two biggest moments, he certainly produced. And that touchdown was an audible. He and Mosley made some eye contact and a little hand signal. If you go back and watch it, you can see it. That was an audible to throw that fade. So those are heat of the battle, adrenaline. Now, assuming Arch doesn't go, he's taking the 1 snaps today, tomorrow, probably Wednesday, regardless. So now he's got a week to prepare, but he's also got a week to think about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And he's going to do it at home against a really good Vanderbilt team and a really good defense. So you never know how that affects him. But he was productive at Troy, and we've learned, Ole Miss, doesn't matter where you played quarterback.
Yes.
You could come in and produce. So I don't think, that was the stigma maybe 5-10 years ago. Oh, well, they did it at FCS or Division II. Right. That's not the same. Now we see that it can translate. So we'll see. We'll see if the running game has improved at all. C.J. Baxter, remember, Trey Wisner came back against Florida, wasn't terribly productive. Then his second game back, he was much more productive against Oklahoma. Maybe that happens with C.J. Baxter as well. But, probably not going to have Michael Taff again in the secondary with the broken fingers. So they're banged up. Offensive line's beat up a little bit. But, they do come home and play at home for 1 week before a bye week and then going to Athens.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk a little bit about the going back to Austin here in a second. We got a chance to hear from Steve Sarkisian about Matthew Caldwell.
Good thing for Matt, he's a very even-keeled guy. I thought he had a great practice today. I think, the players have a lot of confidence in him. I think it's his maturity, his approach. He's very engaged even when he doesn't play. If you ever watched our sidelines in game, 18 is probably the most engaged player on that sidelines. He's always picking guys up, offense, defense, special teams. And so he's got a really good relationship with the guys. And so I don't think it's like, well, who's this guy? He's in a lot of faces a lot of the times. And so it felt very comfortable, felt very normal today. He was a guy who just wanted an opportunity. And that's what we were looking for, a guy who had taken some snaps in college football. And then that's how he's performed, since the day he got here. That's the way he's worked at it throughout camp and throughout the season. And he's making the most of his opportunity.
Roger, before we move on here to Vanderbilt, I want to highlight a guy that it seems like we've started talking about him a little bit more recently, and Ryan Niblett. Now, you're in Austin, Texas. There's a guy just up the road in Arlington named Cavante Turpin that really burst onto the scene after being a returner. Is he kind of following that same suit here?
He's pretty electric, and what he's done in 3 games is pretty remarkable. When you can point to a punt returner in 3 games in a row and said if they weren't the key, they were one of just a handful of keys to a victory. Turpin, I think, is a little more electric and slippery. Niblett's just really good, and he knows how to read the blocks. Now, he's fast, but I think Turpin's kind of maybe that next level guy. But Niblett's a little bit bigger than Cavante Turpin. It's the first time a Longhorns returned 2 punts for touchdowns in a season since Jordan Shipley, so you're going back to 08-09 era. But the fact that he has done it in the times of the game, and specifically this one, under 2 minutes to go, and Sark answered the question kind of defending Jeff Lebby and Mississippi State, saying it's easier said than done to kick away from a guy and not let him return it, because then the precision, you don't get a good punt. Maybe it's a 20, 25-yard punt out of bounds. You're giving a team a short field. I still contend with 2 minutes to go, I wouldn't kick to this guy.
No exactly.
I still wouldn't do it. And I'd say, okay, try your luck on defense, because then you get a chance to, even if the team drives, they got to get to the end zone.
Yep.
Niblett, 1 home run, and he's to the end zone. And watch that play. And there's the last guy on their 51. His name was Marshall Landwehr. He was one of those great training camp, surprise him with a scholarship videos that came out from training camp this summer. He earned that scholarship on 1 block, that one on Saturday.
Absolutely. Special teams has been a big factor for this football team. The offenses look good. The defenses look solid as well in spurts and in moments. You mentioned it, first time in more than 40 days this team is coming back home, but the road doesn't get any easier as a top 10 team comes into Austin this week against Vanderbilt. I find it interesting that obviously Vegas knows that there's concussion protocol and there's a chance that there is no Arch Manning in this football game, but still Texas is a 1.5-point favorite going into this matchup. What do you make here of another chance, another opportunity not to just get a big win in the SEC, but upset one of the hottest teams in the country?
Yeah, doesn't it sound funny? Texas upsetting Vanderbilt.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, just look at my alma mater. They're sitting at 2 in the country, but that's another story. They were 0-11 when I was a senior.
Right.
This is the one that you can really help validate what's happened the last 3 weeks. If you can beat a rugged Vanderbilt team, Pavia, he wants another shot at Texas. Came close last year. That was their first home game since the Alabama game last year, and Texas came in. They jumped on Vanderbilt, and then it turned into a pretty tight ball game, and Vanderbilt had a chance. Longhorns made some big plays, but that was a game where Quinn Ewers came up big. DeAndre Moore had a couple of touchdowns, and they made some big stops on Pavia. Now, Missouri held them to 17 points. That was kind of a rough and tumble game, and I think Texas is pretty confident in their defense. But not only Pavia, it's going to be a big moment for their running back as well, coming back to Austin. And, Eli Stowers, the former Aggie. So Alexander is who I'm talking about for Vanderbilt. It's going to be a tough one. It's 11 a.m. at home. You're going to make sure that the Texas fans are ready to roll at 11. They've had some good success in early ball games. Texas fans would say they've had to play too many over the years with that Big 12 schedule. But this is so big because if you can get this one, you get to 7-2, 4-1
right
to the bye week. And then, you go to Georgia. That's going to be a tall task no matter what. But then, you come home for Arkansas and A&M. So this is a pretty 3 weeks in a row we've been saying this, but pretty pivotal game for them.
Yeah, no question. Before Saturday's kickoff, something really interesting happened, and Diana Rossini, a veteran reporter, came out with a report, and it's essentially said that Coach Sarkisian is interested as a possible replacement for one of the head coaching jobs. Namely, looked like the Tennessee job was the one. The Titans job was the one that was she was connecting him to. There was nothing definitive in the report, but a lot of people, obviously, ran with it. What do you make, obviously, of the reporting? I know that Sark has done his job of being able to shut these things down, but what did you make of the news when it first came out, and how valid do you think it is?
Well, the problem is that there's really no way to disprove it because we don't know in what manner she got the information that it happened. And there's something so simple as I don't even know what could happen in a conversation that could make the report, quote unquote, accurate or not. But for it to happen on Saturday morning, players are getting on their phones when they get up.
Yeah.
And that's what took over Twitter for, about an hour, to the point where Jimmy Sexton's company has to put out a statement. How many times have we seen that? Yeah. I can't ever remember seeing a statement refuting a report about a report that really wasn't anything concrete. Correct. As far as they said this to them. So it was it was a weird situation. But, guys, I've been around Texas. It seems if there's weird, it's going to find Texas. And they always have something that they're dealing with. And it goes back to my first year covering Texas at the Sugar Bowl. And it was discovered they had an imposter on their roster that took the identity of a former junior college teammate and played an entire season. And then the story broke 2 days before the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, and he left. I mean, that's my baseline, guys, for things that, this can't be possible. I said, go back to 1995 Sugar Bowl 2 days before, and Ron Weaver was actually Ron McKelvey. And you don't discard anything. So it just seems to follow Texas, and with Sark's connection to the NFL, with the Atlanta Falcons, with the Oakland Raiders, it's an easy dot to connect that he might be interested because again, what does that mean? Might be interested.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
we all might be interested in something, but nobody cares what we're interested in. But you know who does?
Was that
other coaches recruiting against
100%, 100%, and that's where it could really hurt Sark. But as you said, he got out ahead of it. Jimmy Sexton and their group got ahead of it as well. Before we let you go, one final thing as it relates to coaching. There are now 3 jobs in the SEC now open with the firing of Brian Kelly at LSU. Number one, what did you make of this firing? And being in the league as long as you can, as long as you have been, what do you make of the landscape right now where all these major jobs, including Penn State, including UCLA, now all open before Halloween?
It's staggering to think that, in October, LSU, Florida, and Penn State. I won't even put UCLA in that category.
Correct.
And that's certainly one that would get your attention a lot if those other ones weren't open, Virginia Tech and Oklahoma State. So, Brian Kelly was a weird fit from Notre Dame from the start. And then, they just couldn't win big games. But it is going to be a feeding frenzy. And I don't know what to make of it, because I thought, and I think a lot of people thought, NIL would work in what has turned into be the opposite way. I thought, okay, the money needs to go so much more now to the athletes that we can't afford these buyouts. It seems like it's just the opposite. If things are going bad, we got to flip the script, and we've got to get the money people even more back on our side. If they're grumbling because the faucet might come off. So then all of a sudden you've got what you've got here, and my hunch it's not going to end. I know one place that they're you look at that Oklahoma schedule, and even though they started out well, number 6 in the country, but look what they did. They scored 24 against a Michigan team that was start 2 for Bryce Underwood. And they scored 24 against an Auburn team, both at home, not overwhelming, but John Mateer got a little bit of pub because of the way he plays, and all of a sudden he's a Heisman guy. And now they've still got to go into the belly of the beast of their schedule. And Brent Venables has been a guy that Oklahoma fans have been, kind of grumbling about, especially when he loses to Sark 3 out of 5 years. And, again, they don't score a touchdown. That's 3 games.
Right.
He's lost to Sark, and they haven't scored a touchdown.
Exactly. Now, it should be really interesting to keep your eye on, of course, that Oklahoma job as well. And you mentioned it, the 3 others that are in the SEC alone. Of course, it'll be really interesting to follow as we move forward. Roger.
Oh, by the way, Arkansas is open too.
And Arkansas,
right? We didn't mention them.
Yeah. It's almost like the forgot about job. I mean, because of all the high-profile jobs that are open. Roger, thank you so much for your time here on Southeast Sports Plus today.
All right, thanks, guys. Talk to you.
Absolutely. Roger Wallace covering the Texas Longhorns. Huge win for Texas last week. They can make a statement this week with Diego Pavia and company come to town.
Yeah, I mean, all of the eyes, honestly, are going to be on this game because it means the entire season is on the line for both of these teams.
Absolutely.
Vanderbilt off to their best start in almost 80 years. Texas needs to just win out to make the college football playoffs. So, I mean, you've got all the storylines heading into Austin this weekend.
No question. And probably a new QB1 and Matthew Caldwell entering that game for Sark and company. Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, take a look at the new AP poll and the SEC Players of the Week. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus here on a Tuesday. Welcoming our friend Chessa Boucher here. Gerhard, Mathangani, Patrick Walsh on Southeast Sports Plus. Okay, so the news came out on Sunday, and the very first thing that crossed my mind when Brian Kelly was first fired is, I got to hear from Chessa Boucher on this. You have been firing warning shots, really, I would say from the beginning of the season about, hey, maybe let's find out what this team is. And then last week, Patrick asked you point blank, is this the next James Franklin? You said yes, and turns out you're right. Your initial reactions and then where you are a couple days after the big announcement there in Baton Rouge.
Well, I will tell you, Sunday is my first off day, and so I'm sitting there. I was getting ready to open up a margarita, and then the news broke, and I was like, oh, they're doing this. They're really doing this. And so, of course, I get called into work. Brian and I had to go do live shots for the next 3.5 hours outside football operations and trying to scope everything out. I was a little surprised just simply in the fact of because of the buyout. I think the way that this team absolutely collapsed in the second half against Texas A&M, they hadn't been beaten like that at home in a while. Actually, though, the worst loss at home over the BK era was 2022 against Tennessee, but that also Tennessee was a top 5 team, and they punched you in the mouth from jump. This one, you had a 4-point lead going into halftime, and they just absolutely folded. But I think it's a combination of everything we've seen this year. I will tell you, though, when Brian Kelly got hired, I was high on him because I felt like he had the pedigree. Right. I felt like he didn't have the roster to be able to win the national championships. He could get there, but he just needed the right roster. Well, then you open your mouth last year, Coach BK, and you talk about we're keeping receipts and we'll see you at the national championship. You can't say that, spend $18 million, and then flop like you did, especially with 3 losses before we're even in November. So to me, I felt like it was the right move. I understand that if you don't make this move, you've lost the team completely. You've lost this team. You've lost this roster, everybody. So I think they were doing a lot of damage control. But I will tell you, if you would have told me after the Clemson loss that 2 months later Brian Kelly would be out the door, I would have been like, you're funny. That's a funny. That's not happening. $3 million. It's not going to do. And then sure enough, here we are. Yeah. Wild. Absolutely wild.
Absolutely, it is. Now that his tenure is over, I think you made a great point last week, and you said it kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I think you really meant it, and I think it's a more of an umbrella issue. And you talked about how he's one of the only coaches that comes to LSU and loses weight. He just didn't. Yeah. It just felt like, from a fit perspective, just the LSU culture, it felt like no matter how good of an actual coach he was, he never fit the culture down there. Now that he's out and you can kind of put a bow on his tenure there, what do you make of what the decision was to get Brian Kelly? Because as you see there on your graphic, the 3 coaches before them, I know 2 of them were fired, but they all came back with a championship trophy.
Yep. Yeah, I thought that this was going to be a good hire. On paper, it looked like a great hire. You have a coach who had coached for over 35 years and only had 1 losing season. Again, I just felt like he needed to have the right roster. When you talk about putting $18 million into this roster and you're going all chips, everything on the table, and you come up short in back-to-back SEC games like they did, and then you lose in the manner that you did, you can't come back from that. And so to me, I can say that it's disappointing for how it all unfolded for Brian Kelly. And at first I was like, you know what? He's just I've heard things about him, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to try to form my own opinion. In the first year, I was impressed. I think he came out of the gate, especially with only having 36 guys on their roster when he took over the program. It was not in great shape, and I think he overachieved in year 1, which ultimately set the bar even higher than it already is in Baton Rouge. But I agree with a fit perspective. I don't like the whole fit, and Nick Saban was not from the South. Les Miles was not from the South. But what they did is they worked their tail end off, and they bled purple and gold. They went out and they were kissing babies, and they were asking for fan support. Brian Kelly was on the golf course. Yeah. Brian Kelly was at the beach. Brian Kelly did not take ownership when the games were lost. He always put it on, it's bad coaching, not, hey, it's on me. And so for me, I lost respect from him hearing how he handled situations like that, especially when you're the head coach of a a program like LSU, it falls on you. It doesn't matter if that was your call or not your call. You hired that person to bring them in to make that call, and it didn't work, and you have to own it. He never owned it. Last week's press conference was the first time he said, it's on me. But I think it was too late for him to say it's on me. So to me, I lost respect, because I think he got the contract and the money because of his pedigree, and he wasn't willing to do the work. And we saw that, and that was the product on the field. And I think that the team didn't respect him. They respected Ed Ogeron because Ed Ogeron was at that facility. He lived, breathed, everything was LSU. I just felt like Brian Kelly came in for a paycheck and wanted a natty, but didn't want it enough. And so I think that's the product that we saw on the field. Yeah,
and I mean, I go back to him flaming the reporter for asking about the offense earlier in the year, and I mean, as we've seen how that's turned out, it turns out that they were right about the whole thing, because I mean, Joe Sloan's gone now too. But I got to go back to what I asked you last week, and it stems around, is Brian Kelly James Franklin? Well, I made a comment on the show yesterday saying that Brian Kelly is the Nick Saban of James Franklin's. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is that a little too harsh?
I would have to agree with that. I mean, being 5-11 against ranked teams, you are what your record is, and that's what sucks, is that he's won a lot of ball games, but he's not won a lot of meaningful games, and that doesn't cut it in the SEC. That doesn't cut it in Baton Rouge. Fans are there supporting this team. People that may not even have enough money to pay their light bill, but they're going to put money down to go watch an LSU game. And you can't even put a good product on the field. There's no relatability with Brian Kelly, and I think that's ultimately what played out, is that he just was not a great leader. I think his two worst mistakes was when he took over this program. He got rid of Corey Raymond, who's the godfather of DBU. That was his biggest mistake, and we saw that in the secondary years to play out, and it's just now coming back with him bringing him on 2 years ago and then letting Blake Baker go. I think Blake Baker did a hell of a job with the linebackers and what he did, and he should have never left the building. And Brian Kelly was quick to bring his guys in and then realize this is not going to work. And so I think the coaching staff and what he brought in, rather than really doing his due diligence and figuring out who he wanted on that staff, he was a little lax about it and brought in guys that didn't fit what it takes in Baton Rouge.
Absolutely. Now, in my opinion and several others, this job is now the #1 job in all of college football. Let's spin it forward to who is next, both a realistic way and the way that they'll go about this search from a timeline perspective as they move forward.
I will tell you, I am a bit concerned because I'm not sure if y'all know or not, LSU doesn't have a president. So the governor has stepped in, and he's a loose cannon as it is. He brought in a fake Mike the Tiger last year, and it was a disaster. And so it's one of those things of, it scares me that he has not full control, but he's got a say-so in this. So I don't know which way you go. I will tell you, before with Scott Woodward, I believed in him because he brought in Kim Mulkey. He brought in Jay Johnson, and he's very direct and very precise in what he does and the way he does things. So, but when you have the buyout and he did the deal at A&M with Jimbo Fisher, and then he did the deal with Brian Kelly, I'm like, man. But speaking of candidates, if I had a magic wand and money and said, this is the guy that LSU brings in, I would bring in Dan Lanning. And I say that because I think Dan Lanning has been a huge success at Oregon. Obviously, we don't have the Nike money. We're not on that level. But I think you have the resources here. I think him at Oregon, he's got an easier path to the college football playoffs. So does he want to leave that? But is he that true competitor of, hey, I want to go toe-to-toe with Kirby Smart and the Georgias and show Alabama who they are now that Nick Saban's not there. That's who I bring in. I think he's done a terrific job at Oregon. I think he's also brought in some quality coaches who are now head coaches, and that speaks volumes of who is on his staff. And that's, when you're successful in this industry, it's because of who you hire as your coaching staff, and he's done a great job. So me, that would be him. I'm sure I know that Lane Kiffin is going to be targeted.
Yeah.
I don't know if Lane is, because he got passed up last time and didn't get a call when they hired BK, and he is a petty Betty. I don't know if he even really goes with that, or he's going to be like, no, y'all passed last time, I'm going to do it here. But Lane has to look in the mirror and say, do I have the resources at Ole Miss to win a national championship?
Correct.
If he feels that he does, I don't think he leaves.
Right.
But I definitely think he'll listen to the call.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know if Lane is able to let that go, because he knows how to troll, and he's kept receipts, and that motivates him every morning. But I'd rather have a coach like Lane Kiffin, who has someone to beat and wants to be there and is willing to do the work, than someone like Brian Kelly, who's done this for a long time and won a lot of games, but not won a lot of meaningful games.
Absolutely. Chessa Boucher, you're the best. Thank you so much for joining us here at Southeast Sports Plus.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Y'all have a good one.
Absolutely. Hour number 2 of Southeast Sports Plus continues. Closing up shop here on hour number 1 of Southeast Sports Plus here on a Wednesday. This is one of my favorite things we do all week, a nice staple franchise here on our program. We have our overreactions after a big week in college football. Sometimes these things are way off the mark. Sometimes these things are pretty tepid, but the overreactions are what they are every week. Here's week 10.
Yeah, remember what I said earlier when we were talking about Michigan? You know, I didn't want to talk about the SEC getting X amount of teams into the college football playoff.
Right.
Well, first one here, they are getting 5.
Wow.
I believe they are getting 5, and honestly, I don't know if you can give it to Michigan with 2 losses, even though you beat Ohio State, because the USC loss is going to come back to hurt you because there's just too many good teams in the SEC this year. Honestly, I'll rattle them off here real quick.
Off the top of your head, you
Texas
know
A&M, Bama, Georgia, Vanderbilt gets in.
Okay.
And then it is going to be Ole Miss.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
I think Vanderbilt's probably the only one that you're like,
maybe shaky about, depending on what happens in that Tennessee game.
Yeah, I mean, but we're rolling on here. Lane Kiffin's definitely getting $20 million.
Woo!
It doesn't matter where. He is getting $20 million.
So that's saying either Ole Miss will pony up the $20 million or he'll get $20 million.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, there's just no way. You got to pay the man. He's doing an unreal job over there in Oxford. And then off the record, or not really off the record, Cuse UNC might be the worst game ever, kicking off Friday at 6:30 Central. I mean, you talk about a Syracuse team that had so much hope and potential, and now they're just bad. And then UNC is even worse.
Yeah. North Carolina is even worse.
That's what I call a tank bowl in the NFL.
Yes,
it's like Titans Raiders right there.
We're playing for
what you got?
Draft. We're playing for the #1 draft pick. That is hilarious. I usually peep before, but I didn't see him this time. These are my overreactions. Welcome back to the Heisman House, Marcel Reed. That's a staple of my overreactions. We welcome somebody to the Heisman House. Marcel Reed, you are going back in. Obviously, an incredible run so far, this team, both running and throwing the football. Texas will find a way to the CFP. I don't know if I'm with you about 5 teams getting in, but if there are 5,
wow,
Texas is going to be one of them. They still got Vandy, still got Georgia on the board this year. I think the committee will see the late wins in a different light than the early wins and the early losses, early stumbles.
Okay.
The Longhorns are in. And Oklahoma,
Citrus Bowl.
You had playoff aspirations 4 weeks ago. But you still have Tennessee, Alabama, possibly Missouri, and maybe LSU. I can see a scenario where they lose every game. And they're going to the Citrus Bowl.
Vanderbilt fans, I'm sorry if I jinx you. I don't care.
So Oklahoma in the Citrus Bowl. That is our overreactions for week 2. Stay with us. Hour number 2 is next.
Outbound transmission?
Affirmative.
Crew ready?
Check.
Signal lock?
Check.
Downstream stations online?
Locked.
Let's light this candle.
Flame on.
In 3, 2, roll show open.
In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus live with Simone and Gerhard Mathangani.
The greatest coach of all time in college football, Nick Saban, is now on the team with College Game Day. However, several of his assistant coaches are all over the country. That includes Steve Sarkisian at Texas, and that includes the hottest commodity in college football right now in Lane Kiffin. Saban has been very outspoken ever since he is taken off the whistle and the straw hat, so to speak, for Alabama. Of course, now serving as an analyst in college football, and now sharing some of his thoughts on what Lane Kiffin and some of his assistants should be doing and looking at as they're now weighing the future for themselves and their families and their football programs moving forward. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus. Gerhard, Mathangani, Patrick Walsh with you. I find it really interesting every time Saban opens his mouth because he could talk about college football from a lot of different angles that is to me phenomenal. He can talk about it from a recruiting standpoint. He can talk about it from an X's and O's and schematic standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
But most importantly, he can talk about it from the way that he sees the coaching perspective, the coaching position as of right now, because he came in at a certain time back in the late 70s, early 80s, and the mid 90s. He left it at a certain time, and he sees the college football game from afar now. What do you make of his latest comments there about his former offensive coordinator?
You know, I honestly think he does have a point here. I know you talked about, as Miss Terry likes to call, baby coaches, and Lane Kirby, Steve Sarkisian, who might go to the NFL. Who knows what he's doing. But honestly, I feel like he has a point here. Obviously, LSU just fired Brian Kelly.
Right.
Billy Napier was fired from Florida a couple weeks ago. And while on paper those might sound like better jobs than Ole Miss,
right,
nobody knows exactly what's going on behind the scenes except for some of these coaches.
Yep.
And I mean, Nick Saban's coached at both LSU and Alabama, so he's seen both sides there. And honestly, I think Lane stays.
Okay, yeah. So you think he stays? So a part of your overreactions in the last hour was that he's going to make $20 million.
I think they dish out the money.
So they pony up. And Nick Saban really lended some thought to that. I'll actually read you some of the things he had to say. He was talking with On3.com, On3 Sports. He says that jobs weren't great before, are now. Lane is the first name up for Florida, then the first name up for LSU. But you can have a long debate whether either one of those jobs is actually better than the job he has now, because some of the guys over there at Ole Miss that pretty much give him whatever he wants from a roster standpoint. So if you're thinking if you give him whatever he wants from a roster standpoint, well, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump from a salary standpoint to be able to give him whatever he wants there as well.
Look, I think I just said this to you during the break. People are starting to realize that Ole Miss is underrated when it comes to the NIL collectives and the money that they actually have.
Absolutely.
Now, you could make an argument that, yes, Louisiana high school talent and Florida high school talent is probably better than Mississippi talent.
Sure.
But still, when you look at what Lane has around him, he's a great defense away from being 8-0 right now.
Yeah.
That's been the lone blemish was the Georgia game. But I just don't see Lane actually leaving Oxford. He was very outspoken about it. His daughter was also very outspoken about it in the Many Lives of Lane Kiffin that came out last month. But what he is doing for this program, he has infinite job security. He can stay for as long as he wants. And why would you not want that? It's the same thing with Eli Drinkwitz up at Mizzou.
Right.
He has job security. They're not going to fire him because who are they going to hire him that's going to do better than him?
Correct. It would have sounded crazy 10 years ago, 15 years ago, to say that the head coach at Indiana would get a sniff at Penn State and not take it. It would have sounded crazy to say that a guy would stay at Missouri. But Nick Saban is right, and he was kind of tertiary in his comments because he didn't want to bash other programs. Obviously, he's not trying to bash LSU. He's not trying to bash Florida. But he's right in one sense that you can make an argument that the Ole Miss job is just as good as those other jobs right now, especially if they're able to give you what you need to complete your roster. And that's exactly what Kirk Cignetti said. Hey, if IU's going to give me everything that I need, he's going to stay at Hoosier. He's not going to go to Penn State. He's not going to go to one of these blue bloods. And they pony up for as far as the money goes for his salary. We'll see if they pony up for the roster, but it looks like the financial security is there for him. I think that could be the canary in the coal mine, the Cignetti deal with Lane Kiffin. A program that you think, okay, this is a stepping stone job. You would think IU is a stepping stone job. You would think Ole Miss is a stepping stone job to LSU and Florida. Might not be anymore.
No.
And it might be a career job.
And honestly, I feel like both of those coaches have made it not a stepping stone job anymore.
Yep.
I just don't see a world where you go from the SEC to the SEC anymore.
Yes.
It just doesn't really make any sense to me because There are so many variables that go into it. Is Florida really that much better of a job now than Ole Miss?
Right. I mean,
is LSU really that much better of a job right now than Ole Miss?
The game I always like to play, though, is close your eyes.
All right, I'll close my eyes.
Physically close your eyes.
I physically close my eyes.
Close your eyes if you're watching out there, unless you're driving.
Yes. Yeah. Keep your eyes on the road.
Exactly. Do you, at any point, see Indiana University hoisting up a national championship trophy?
Yes.
Do you at any point see Ole Miss hoisting up a national championship trophy?
Yes, this year.
I think, to me, in your mind's eye, it's just hard to see because we've only seen the Blue Bloods win the national championships. We've only seen LSU and Ohio State and Alabama and once back in the day, Florida and Michigan. We just haven't seen these other programs break through, and that's always been my thing. And people will make the argument by saying, well, those programs never had enough, and those good coaches always end up, the coaches that are those lower programs always end up leaving. Like, for example, Nick Saban left Michigan State for LSU. He left the Dolphins for Alabama. So they always leave for those marquee programs. I think the big thing is that, like, hey, you have to almost shake the perception. Clemson did this. Clemson shook the perception. They went from perpetually 8-4 to hoisting national championships. So I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying, to me, a lot of people in and around college football will say that it won't be done because we've never seen these programs do it.
I just think, and this is partly because we watched the documentary on Lane Kiffin, I just think if he was going to leave Oxford, it would have been the last coaching cycle where he was potentially linked to Auburn, and we talked about, and then Landry made a PowerPoint begging him to stay. He's just built up this Ole Miss program, and if he goes anywhere else, the expectations are going to be sky high. You're going to win the press conference by signing Lane Kiffin to be your next head coach. But who knows if it's got that same feel, though.
Right.
Because, I mean, sometimes, some of these coaches, and stick with me here for a second, some of these coaches are so good in their environments. Why would you want to pick it up? It's honestly, what would be a good analogy here? Let me think. It's honestly kind of like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and move from Cleveland. I just built this great program here in Cleveland, and I'm going to pack everything up and go to New York City and try the same tactics and see if it works.
Right.
It doesn't always work.
Doesn't always work, yeah. Fit is huge.
Lane Kiffin fits the state of Mississippi so well that it's hard for me to ever see him actually getting up and leaving.
Yeah. And
it's hard.
Yeah. It's hard for me as well, which is crazy because the documentary pointed out how many times he did move early in his career. I mean, he bounced around to a lot of different places. Tennessee, USC, the Raiders.
I mentioned it to you. I was like, I didn't realize how close in proximity all of these moves were.
Right. And then to FAU, and now taking over there at Ole Miss. That's one of my big things too. Is that, like, has he found a stability that he really likes now, and saying, hey, look, I've done the bounce around thing, and I've been at power programs. He was at USC when they were humming. He was at Alabama when they were humming. So he's like, hey, does he feel a sense of like, hey, I can build that here? Because, we've seen people do this. We've seen, for example, Mike Krzyzewski at Duke. Duke was nothing. And I'm not saying Ole Miss was nothing, because Ole Miss has had a decent, very good program. But Krzyzewski brought the championship trophies and changed the perception of Duke basketball. Does Lane Kiffin see himself in that same light? Hey, I'm going to be a legend because I will change the perception of this team. I've always thought it was just basically really ironic that Lane has this kind of rebellious attitude just in himself, and he's the head coach of the Ole Miss Rebels. Because to me, you talk about fit, it just fits so perfectly with his personality of who he is and of what he wants to bring, that if he thinks that he can buck a trend and do things a little bit differently, a la Mike Leach, I think he can do it.
And you bring up an interesting word there, personality.
Yeah.
He is very outspoken on social media.
Absolutely.
He does all of these appearances.
Yeah.
He takes these little jabs. He took the little jab at Kirby a couple weeks ago. He took the jab after the Oklahoma game. This guy was talking to me all game, and he's all quiet now.
Right.
You can't do that if you're the head coach of Florida. I feel like your own your own fans are going to be like, well, all right, what clown did we just hire? Why is our head coach doing this? Or LSU?
Yeah.
Where the spotlight is just so much brighter there.
It is brighter. I do think the only tie-in with Florida that I do see, and some of it's very topical, that makes me kind of smile when I hear it, because I didn't make this up. I've heard this elsewhere, and it makes me smile when people mention this. They're like, well, they want to Florida. If Florida fans close their eyes and they have a coach, what do they want? They want an offensive-minded guy that wears a visor, that's a little rough around the edges, just a little bit, and that reminds them of Steve Spurrier. Yeah. And Steve Spurrier kind of reminds them of what Lane Kiffin is. Now, I know Urban Meyer, he worked as well. He was a completely different kind of coach. But I think they were always more tied to Steve Spurrier, and they see a lot of Spurrier. I mean, obviously, Lane does it very differently. They see a lot of Spurrier characteristics in Lane. But Spurrier was obviously a Heisman Trophy winner. To me, Spurrier was still an athlete as a coach. Yes. He was still taking that trash-talking attitude as a coach. That's just who he was, even though he was 40 years removed from his playing days. I find it really interesting, though, and you mentioned the money. I think a lot of this will come down to money, but Coach Saban is hinting that he could probably make the same money there in Oxford, which would be interesting, because if they can pony it up, then I'm right there with you. If you can get the players you want and you can get the money you want, why leave?
Lane, if you're watching this, which I know you're very active on social media, so there's a potential that you could be watching this. If you stay in Ole Miss, if you stay in Oxford and you still want money, I got one word for you. Aflac.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go join Nick Saban and Coach Prime.
Honestly,
Aflac.
That's exactly what I've been saying. I've been saying he has the personality to sell any product. I mean, go. I mean, because I know Aflac's paying coaches right now. They're paying Dion. They're paying Coach Saban. I think right now, if he wants to just make an extra X amount of $1 million, let's call it $4 or $5 million, to go be a representative and go make funny commercials, I think that's perfect for him. Now, that'll take up probably an annoying part of his offseason that he probably would not want to give up, considering how short those offseasons are. I just think it's really interesting. I think it's really interesting. And he will be the talk of the town, because he will have his pick at whatever job he wants to, for sure. Speaking of Kevin, we got a chance to hear from him talking about his quarterback in Trinidad Shambliss and getting to enjoy the W's.
I don't know. I didn't ask him. I just trying to teach him, things that I missed in life and moments, and, just because I was always like, okay, man, we won, get to the locker room, next game and all that. And so just trying to help him through to, stop and enjoy the moments, and because they're hard to come by. And I said it before, being at USC, we won 34 straight and 26 straight at Alabama with Coach Saban, that I just felt like sometimes, man, I didn't enjoy the moments, because those are historic runs. And so when we get in these good seasons, which there's been a lot of here, just try to tell the guys hey, enjoy it, especially after the wins.
I know he's talking about wins. I know he's talking about his quarterback in Trinidad Shambliss. But do you also think part of that is throwing an Easter egg out there, basically saying that he's going to stay? Basically saying he's talking about it in a different light. He's talking about it how
he's reminding himself.
Right. You think he's doing that? It's like there's a part of me that listened to that. And this is very dime store psychologist, but him telling his players, reminding his players, hey, enjoy this winning. And he kind of alluded back to his time at Alabama and hey, enjoy the winning, enjoy the moment. I wonder if enjoy the moment is kind of double entendre. He's talking about himself as well. Just something to think about.
Yeah, honestly, that is interesting, because I don't see it from the other perspective where he's telling everybody,
right,
hey, enjoy the winning because I'm going to leave here soon.
Right,
I don't see it from that light.
Me neither.
I feel like ever since the documentary came out, he's just started to really have a different tone, so to speak. And actually, I'll extend it back to even when he got in Oxford. I think it opens up with I needed Oxford more than Oxford needed me.
Yeah. And then I think there's a real self-awareness, self-realization that's happening right there in Oxford. We will see if Lane Kiffin goes or stays anywhere in and around college football. Big game coming up this week as well, keeping their college football playoff hopes alive. Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we head over to Arkansas and check in with the Hogs coming up next. We're rolling right along. Hour number 2 here on Southeast Sports Plus. Had some great guests so far here today. Had Pete Yannity from Spartanburg, South Carolina, breaking down the Gamecocks' very narrow defeat against Alabama. Had Kevin Ryans in here about the very narrow Missouri loss to Vanderbilt, and we will have Trey Dare in here as well after, once again, a very narrow loss to the Auburn Tigers. But there was one loss that really kind of shook the earth, so to speak, in college football. That was LSU's loss this past weekend to Texas A&M. On one hand, it made a lot of people think Texas A&M raise their eyebrows and say, whew, this team is playing on a different level and a real championship contender. On the other side, it made it also seem like a perennial national power in LSU will be the top job available in all of college football after firing Brian Kelly. To me, that game brought so many different narratives within the game, number one, and just the way that LSU faltered towards the end, and then now Brian Kelly, who's now on the job market.
I remember watching it up until halftime. I'm like, okay, LSU has an 18-14 lead. This is going to be a good game. And I was just shocked at the fact that just the way LSU lost. And I think obviously all the fans probably felt the same way. They were just, I don't think they've ever seen something like that in Death Valley. Like it was appalling. 35 points. I believe they got outscored 35-7 in the second half. Marcel Reed, again, I'm going to use the same analogy yesterday, carved up that defense just like Thanksgiving turkey. And it really was shocking to the point where, you had to fire Brian Kelly. Yeah. But now, where does Brian Kelly go from here?
It's the interesting question because he has a $54 million buyout coming his way. Yes. The second highest ever. Theoretically, and as I haven't read the entire contract buyout, but to me, this doesn't read like James Franklin's, where there's a lot of stipulations that may or may not yield that he does end up staying on another sideline or in a studio coming up this fall. Brian Kelly's buyout looks to me like he could do a lot of what Ed Orgeron did and keep his toes in the sand and talk college football here and there. I honestly, I think given where college football is now, and given where and Trey talked about this last week. Trey Dare talked about this last week. How he probably needs a rehab to his image, so to speak, because he didn't leave Notre Dame with all the accolades. No. He now leaves LSU with a lot of people really bitter at him. I don't think it would really hurt him if he does TV for a little while to say, "Hey guys, let me just reconstruct my image here, look at the game from afar, and do it kind of what Dan Mullen did, studio job for a little bit, TV for a little bit, and then come back into the game."
The thing about that though is I feel like Brian Kelly is a very stubborn guy.
Oh, no question. No question.
I mean, you saw it this year trying to downplay the offense and how they performed all year. Which leads me to believe I think he's just going to get right back into the hunt and try to find another job.
Yeah, and I think that there's a point for him that is in he still has something to prove.
Right.
Because if you just take if people are now taking a snapshot look at Brian Kelly's career, one of the big things that I think a lot of people are saying is, well, he left Cincinnati. They ended up being fine.
Yeah.
He left Notre Dame.
They ended up being great.
The team made a run to the national championship. He left LSU, and if they get Lane or whoever the case is, I think most people think LSU will be fine moving forward. Oh, yeah. He does not want to be thought about as a coach that he leaves a program and it's addition by subtraction. He wants to keep his name in the upper echelon there. So I'm right there with you. I do think that there's a possibility that he sticks around in college football.
But now we're going to go to Trey here in a few minutes, but I pose this question. Does Arkansas try to go after Brian Kelly now? Because I feel like he's definitely not going to be sought after for all of these big-name jobs anymore. Right. I don't think Penn State goes for him. I don't think Florida goes for him, which leads me to believe Arkansas, maybe.
Right.
Kentucky, if they fire Mark Stoops, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
Oklahoma State, if they don't get Billy Napier, maybe.
Maybe. That's kind of where, if I'm just doing the where do I picture him, if I'm doing the Photoshop game, right? I love these days whenever a coach takes a new job or if a player gets traded, immediately the Photoshop game it's on point. It makes it look like they were really taking pictures in that gear. I do see Brian Kelly at a place like Oklahoma State. And trying to revive that program. And if another major, let's just say that another major thing happens in college football. Let's just say Chesapeake Boucher gets her way and Dan Lanning comes down to Baton Rouge and Dan Lanning's the next head coach in LSU. And now Oregon's open. Now who goes to Oregon? Now can the domino effect be where now Brian Kelly fills in one of the dominoes after Dan Lanning leaves? So there's still a lot to be decided here between all these heavy hitter programs.
I think it would be very interesting if LSU was able to pluck Dan Lanning away from Oregon, because while the recruitment up there can't be great because he's got to fly all across the country to get to the true football states. He's got all the money that he could ever need. And Oregon will always be the Big Ten. I think we were talking about this yesterday. The Big Ten is always going to be a 3, sometimes 4 team bid
in
the college football playoff. And Oregon, as long as they are just somewhat decent, the Big Ten is just so bad. It's just so bad.
On the bottom ranks, yes.
Oh, yeah, easily. Honestly, you could throw it up there with the ACC if they didn't have some of the good teams up at the top. That it's hard to believe it. And then I was driving into work this morning, and I read that Eddie O was like, "Oh yeah, I'll hop in my truck and just go on down to LSU, and I will gladly coach for them again." And it's just like, man,
I would. I literally just saw that. I pulled up. I opened that tab, and I'm now coming back to it for the first time since I opened it like a couple hours ago. But no, Ed Orgeron, he said the day or maybe the month after that he was ousted, he wanted to get back into coaching.
Yes.
And we talk about fit all the time. There is no better fit as far as just from a pure cultural standpoint. There was no better fit at LSU than at Orgeron. He fit the people, he fit the personnel. Now, of course, obviously, I think a lot of people credit the players for the winning.
And Joe Brady.
Right, exactly, and Joe Brady, and they credit him for getting the players because he is one heck of a recruiter. But I found it really interesting that Eddie O is trying to get back into the game, and Eddie O, I can see him at a place like Oklahoma State as well. Brought up Oklahoma State. That is a potential, in my opinion, landing spot for him too.
Yeah, I don't see Eddie O. If he goes anywhere, it's LSU, and it's just I don't see it happening. But let's bring in Trey Darrell. Let's see what he has to say. Do you think Eddie O is getting anywhere into college football if it's not LSU?
Arkansas. He's being kicked around to Arkansas.
I'd love it. That'd be great. You go from Sam Pittman, one what do they call him, the head hog, and Eddie O.
The head hog. Well, that's anybody's the head hog, whether it's Petrino or Pittman or Bielema or whoever. They're, in our sportscast there, we're always referring to the head hog, whoever that may be.
I feel like some people wear it well. I feel like he wear it well.
Some things I'm hearing that I don't, you hear these things. I want to preface this by saying you guys have to know this. Nobody really on the inside is going to speak, understandably. So any booster that gives $5,000 to university, they think they know, because they make that kind of commitment.
Of course.
So they always feel like, oh, I'm sharing this, and it's big time information. But Arkansas is going to take a big swing, but the execution of that swing could be a different thing.
No question. We talked about this last week. We did the thought experiment. You did the blind who's top 5, and now the LSU job has officially come open. Auburn not yet. We'll see what happens there.
You can see that online, by the way. Picture Nation YouTube page.
That's right.
Was breaking it down. He ranked Arkansas number 1.
Oh, he ranked Arkansas number 1. Oh, no. Zero bias there.
Running back. Come on. Yeah. Exactly. Number 1 to him. It was the Peyton list. It wasn't the official list.
But now that LSU is officially open, how do fans that are not on a part of the show, how do fans overall think this coaching search will go, and how deep will it go? Because I feel like there's kind of 2 questions now for every club. Number 1, who do you go after? What kind of guy do you go after? G5 guy? Do you go for an established guy that's a head coach right now? Do you find a guy in-house? And what's the timetable for those two questions for both the AD there and for the fans there, what's the one that they would love to see their coach be able to fulfill for this program moving forward?
Yeah, a lot. There's a lot to unpack there, and I go back to that booster comment about like everybody thinks they know, but really they just because you donate a little bit of money, even if it's tens of thousands of dollars, doesn't mean you do know. I think there is some regret that Arkansas probably didn't pull the trigger on Sam Pittman because last year's coaching cycle was a lot different. Yeah. And then again, that booster comment, everybody coming out of all these universities said, hey, it's a different time now. These buyouts are going to change, revenue share. Well, we don't have the money and woe is me. And we're seeing an unprecedented coaching cycle. Penn State firing a coach for $50 million. LSU firing a coach for $50 million. Florida hiring a coach for between $10 and $20 million. So clearly that was all nonsense about like, well, we don't have the money and it's changing and we should invest somewhere else. So, where does Arkansas go? They could have kind of been the belle of the ball in the coaching cycle last year. Now, more shoes are going to drop, guys. How far down do they fall? They're behind Penn State. They're behind LSU. They're behind Florida. Does Sark go to the NFL? If it gets really bad, does Sark get fired? What if there's other movement? Michigan, what if that comes open? Lane goes to Florida. Ole Miss comes up. Not that Ole Miss is a great job, but, you get what I'm saying. So another thing I do think I think what we've talked about on the show is going to happen at some point. Don't think it's going to happen this year. A coach is going to get into the playoff and he's going to leave for another job. I just think that's really, really hard. Yeah. I think that's really, really, really hard. So to me, where I kind of think just in my nature in following the sport, having my love for the sport, it starts with Lane Kiffin. If he doesn't get into the playoff, he's going to be a hot, 9-3, gets left out. He's going to be a hot commodity, but it looks like they may get into the playoff. And then beyond that, the American Conference. I know they want to call it the American Athletic Conference. So you got Ryan Silverfield, you got John Sumrall, and you got Alex Golish. Only one of those guys is going to get into the playoff. Actually, I suppose there's a scenario where maybe James Madison, which shout out Bob Chesney, my guy I used to work in Boston, Holy Cross, doing big things. They got one of the best defenses in the country. Yeah. They're putting up points. Man, everybody JMU hires, they get it moving. But anyway, circling back there, the G5. I think that triangle there, Sumrall, Golish, and who's the other one?
Silverfield.
Ryan Silverfield. I don't know if all three of them are going to leave, but I think it's a safe bet. Two of those guys aren't going to be able to turn down the money. Apparently, Sumrall's telling people close to him, you kind of get on the internet, that he loves it at Tulane. And that maybe there could be a bigger, better job for him down the line. Now, LSU may also look at it and be like, hey, this guy's right in our backyard. He won at Troy. Right. He's winning at Tulane. Yep. He fits our culture. Yeah. The bulk of our fan base is well aware of him. Can John Sumrall turn down $10 million from LSU?
That's the thing. I think he's giving the normal coach speak when it comes to these things, and he's a master at it. He did it when he was at Troy. He said, I'm here where I am. I am where my feet are. Then he ends up going and taking the Tulane job, obviously doing a phenomenal job, and I'm right there with you. I mean, an hour down the road, and all the LSU fans are familiar with him. I think he'd be a home run hire if they do not get Lane Kiffin. We'll go back to the coaching search in just a little bit, but first, let's talk specifically about Arkansas's latest game. Bobby Petrino and company, once again, it just feels like we were talking about the moniker about the champions of almost. Once again, it's an almost situation. Third game now. I think when you total up the margin of defeat in the last three games, I think it's about 2 touchdowns, or maybe a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. But for this Arkansas Razorbacks football team, what'd you make of the game against Auburn and just some of the ways that they were coming short once again?
Forget finding ways to win. This team now is finding ways to lose. They 21-10 at half. Auburn can't do anything offensively. It's not often you're down, you make a quarterback change, and you have a double-digit comeback, and that happened. They have all these resources invested into their offense, and just still couldn't get it done. You look back on some of those plays. Some of it's miscommunication. Some of it's on Talon. My big takeaway going into that game was I don't see a path for Bobby Petrino getting the Arkansas job without a win. Mm-hmm. He could still gambling here. He could backdoor cover his way into this thing. What if they are the 6th or 7th best job in town, and they do, offer some big fish, but they're turned down by 5 or 6, and they just throw their hands up, and it's guys, we tried. This is what we're going to have to do. We're going to get them at a little bit of a discount compared to what we wanted to spend.
Right.
We're going to invest that money in the roster. So I think that's possible. But I felt a shift in the fan base, and I expected to feel that shift. You had to win that game.
Mm-hmm.
You just had to. It's a hard sell on your fan base whenever you said we fired Sam Pittman not because we lost to Notre Dame by 43 points, but because Sam was 4-19 in one-score games. So a handful of one-score games. If Petrino, God forbid, goes 0-7, would it be? Yeah, 0-7 or 1-6. I think you're in danger of turning off your fan base. And here's why coaching hires and firings are so important. That stadium holds 70,000 people. You're not selling, 20, 30,000 extra tickets a game. And you got beers that are, $10 to $15 a pop. And if those 20,000 people would all spend, $20, that's $400,000 you just, leaked away because you guys aren't competitive. That's what makes winning so important. And that's what makes getting the coaching hire so important. You can't turn off your fan base. You need to generate the revenue. You need to generate excitement. And to do that, you have to have the right guy in place.
Absolutely. As Arkansas, looks forward, what are some of the ways that this team wants to be able to finish the season? Obviously, a bowl game is still there, mathematically speaking. They still have a chance to win their first SEC game against a team that obviously hasn't won an SEC game as of late. What's the overall morale been like for this team? And is there any chance that you see it shifting as they go forward into this week?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So maybe, if Arkansas beats Mississippi State and they have LSU, Texas, Missouri, they win 2 of those 3 games. So 3-1 down the stretch. It's like, well, hey, Bobby, you lost your first 3 games. That's not good. But you did go 3-1. So, we're reactionary people. We remember how things finished, not necessarily how things started. I think the reasonable expectation, the over-under, guys, is 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
That's the over-under win total from here on out. And this is their best shot to get a win. And this team's good. They are. They're playing for this coach. They really are. Jeff Levy's done a great job. We talk about how close Arkansas is. Mississippi State's even closer. They've got the win. They've got a good win already over Arizona State. Lost by 2 on the road at Florida. They had Texas dead to rights. Now, a game like that, you wonder if there's a chance you lose your locker room, because that was a devastating way to lose a game. They
mm-hmm.
kind of let go of the rope there. There was another team they took to overtime. That's
Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee. So, they're there.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, with teams that are every bit as good as what Arkansas has been playing. Now, I do believe in the transitive property. Texas A&M beat up on them pretty good.
Yeah.
So, Arkansas did push A&M, but I still like what I'm hearing from the players. Raylan Sharp had a great endorsement for Bobby Petrino on Tuesday night. Saying he's a good man and he believes in him and he wants to play for him and he knows how much that Petrino wants the job. But that still doesn't change the fact that the results just aren't there. So, the expectation coming in was, a 6, maybe 7 win season. Anything beyond that would have been, pretty remarkable. 8 wins would have been fantastic. 7 wins, I think they would have a hard time firing Pittman. But rumors are he was going to retire regardless.
Absolutely.
Anything short of him getting a big-time raise. He was done after this year.
Absolutely. We will continue our conversation with Trey Dare. We'll hear from Bobby Petrino and talk a little bit more about the larger coaching search here on Southeast Sports Plus. Stay with us. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus here, first hour on a Wednesday. Talking now some South Carolina football. Gerhard Mathangani, Patrick Walsh with you, and excited to be joined by our friend Pete Yanity from Spartanburg, South Carolina. Pete, we were just talking in the break about South Carolina's big game, and those have to be probably more heartbreaking than blowout losses in the main sense that you have a top 5 team on the ropes and a chance to win at home. The student section basically had already come down to celebrate a big win there. Now, as you have a few days to digest what happened there in Columbia, what were your overall thoughts of Shane Beamer's team, the effort that they pulled out, and that very, very narrow win, close win?
Being brutally frank, as they were leading with the 22-14 lead there in the fourth quarter, I was thinking to myself, is it going to be worth it, the fine they have to pay the SEC for the students storming the field, or is it better to save that money and put it toward rev share and however it works, NIL and, that kind of thing or something? But you talk about a reversal of emotions, but it's just so typical of what this team has gone through this year, because Sellers gets hurt in the second quarter against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is one heck of a football team. Right. That's a great team. They probably would have still won that game, but you just have to wonder in the back of your mind, how different might that game have been if Lenora Sellers was available and healthy and doing his thing? Could they have maybe pulled out a 24-20 home win? Okay, so then you look at the Missouri game, in which they led in the fourth quarter on the road in Columbia, did not particularly play well, but a stop here, a stop there by their defense, more than just whatever they had. I think were they negative rushing yards in that game? That was the game. They were terrible off on the running game. A 300-yard passing game out of Sellers in that game. But so you're on the road, maybe you steal a win there, and then you go to LSU. You're right in that game. First snap of the game, you're under center, and you fumble it, and you basically hand LSU a touchdown. But as the game went on, South Carolina was pretty even with LSU, loses a tight one there. Did not play well against Oklahoma, but last year, the team they play this week, Ole Miss, came into Columbia and won almost the exact same kind of game that Oklahoma did. South Carolina looked flat. They looked lost. They eventually got it together, put the 6-game winning streak together. And so then last week, you bounce back from the Oklahoma game. Sellers is going to be decent. Nick Harbor, the constant mantra we've heard around here is get him the ball more. And frankly, if I've got a guy with that kind of speed, I would try everything under the sun, not just the vertical passing game. I'd be doing all kinds of stuff with him. And I even line him up in the backfield at times. And not that, these guys have forgotten more than I'll ever know. And Mike Shula, for all the criticism he gets, he's been an offensive coordinator with some great success. So I think he'll be fine as time goes on. But I just think that last week was one of those, again, stories that will just sum up this season for the South Carolina team. And you could argue the two most difficult games now are the two that they face in these next two games with a bye week in between, at Ole Miss and at Texas A&M. If you'd said, well, during that stretch, you might go 2-3, but at least you'll either take care of business at LSU because things are starting to shake there, and you'll beat either Alabama or Oklahoma at home, or maybe you get lucky, you win 3 out of 5. But that's the troubling thing, is that, by mid-November, this team could be sitting on 7 losses and need a waiver if they can, beat Coastal Carolina and Clemson at 5-7 just to get to a bowl game.
Pete, I thought that the South Carolina defense came out and they played really well against Alabama. Now, some people could say Alabama was reeling from playing 4 straight AP-ranked opponents, and they were just limping to the bye week. But what did you make of the Gamecocks' performance on defense?
Well, the fact that Ty Simpson was good but not great, to me, that's where it begins. I mean, it's not like to South Carolina what he's done to some other programs. And the fact that, again, that's a really good offense. And you look at some of the aspects of that game, and a South Carolina team that actually outgained Alabama in that ball game and limited the Alabama running game. And that tells you that they, forced them to try to put the ball in the air. Simpson was still really good, and, they still threw for 250 yards. You take that any day, but they were limited to what a paltry, number of yards, 72 yards run game. And that's not the balance that obviously DeBoer and crew would want. But I was impressed with the South Carolina defense. It's ever improving. They've got, Dylan Stewart has been good this year, not great. That could be because last year he benefited from having Kyle Kennard on the other side, who had to get a lot of attention. They've not necessarily had a defensive player who's wowed you. Kilgore and Smith in the secondary have had their moments, but there's not necessarily that one player on the D like they've had in recent years where it's like, wow. Kyle Kennard last year, and you could almost say Stewart, but Kyle Kennard last year, it's like, boy, that's the best defensive end in college football. And they had Demetrius Knight come in, made a huge play to seal the rivalry game against Clemson, but he was a very productive player. They've gotten productivity on all three levels, but just no star power. But this was a very good collective effort, I thought, by the defense against a really good offensive team.
Absolutely. Every coach has to make some mid-season adjustments, and it looks like Shane Beamer and company will be doing so as well with their playbook. We'll get his thoughts first, and then we'll check back in with Pete.
For one, it's the volume that you take into a game plan with. So let's say that, I don't know what NFL teams have. I think most NFL teams on their call sheet probably have 100+ plays available to call on a game. I'd say most colleges, when I was at, Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley, we usually, that little, sheet of paper that you see him on the sidelines with, that thing usually has about 65 or 70 plays. And I'd say that's what most colleges are from a play call standpoint. We're no different. We did last week we talked about just, shrinking that number a little bit. It wasn't drastic. It wasn't like we went from 90 plays to all of a sudden you got 40 to choose from. I mean, I think it was maybe 10 less than what we had, 15 less than what we had against Oklahoma. When you do that, you're able to, practice more looks in practice and things like that. Defenses, the schemes you may get. It's certainly Lenoris every week, not just last week, Jack, but every week Lenoris has great ideas. Luke has great ideas. Those guys are up here all the time watching tape at night on their own and coming up with ideas that they bring to Shula or they talk to me about. And so that's always part of the process. So it's simplifying the number a little bit. It's getting input from players like we always do.
So Coach did a good job of explaining how they're shrinking it, because if you hear just shrinking the playbook, you think, well, you're cutting that thing in half, and next thing you know, you're not going to run any of the same plays that you ran towards the beginning of the season. But he did qualify it and say it's probably 10 plays, 15 plays here and there. What's your sense of the way he'll manage both Lenore Sellers, the way the offense runs, and everything else as they move forward through the season? And like you said, try to get themselves into a bowl game.
A few thoughts on that, having heard Shane make that comment at his news conference this week, part of which we just played. And, again, he doesn't want it to be like, oh, this is a big story. They've made it simple suddenly. I think to the point of pulling some of the plays and maybe simplifying it for the week, Lenore Sellers, one of his hidden talents is what he's able to do when a play breaks down.
Right.
It would be interesting to know if the Baltimore Ravens have the same example. I'm not trying to compare Lenore Sellers to Lamar Jackson, but Lamar Jackson's a great improviser,
Absolutely.
Right? Many times, they've always had a home run hitter at running back. They got one of the best you could ever ask for right now. And they usually have a decent group of guys in the passing game, but more times than not, the Ravens will turn a game or turn momentum because Jackson decides to get out of the pocket and go make something happen. And I think the less structure around Lenore Sellers works well for him.
Right.
The guy they'll see this week, Trinity Chambliss, I think he's one of those guys that you would put in that same category. Jackson Dart a year ago for Ole Miss maybe was one that multiple playbook, lots of checks, lots of options that way. So I think it speaks to the fact that I'm sure the conversation they had among themselves was, let's go with the plays that have worked. But let's also give Lenoris the opportunity to create some things. And at times he did. And he was going against what is a really good Alabama defense. Anxious to see if Ole Miss is able to contain him and maybe not let him get the big play, but they took advantage after the late fumble on the punt. They certainly took advantage, and that looked like a design play for Sellers in the game last week against Alabama. But when you face other teams, maybe it's best to let Sellers, have a playbook, have structure, have opportunities for Harbor to get his hands on the ball. but also make it so that you make that defense uncomfortable. And are they really running this, or is Sellers about to take off out of the pocket after, we brought a guy from the weak side trying to blitz? Something else you got to keep in mind, and this speaks a lot to Alabama's defense, give them credit. Their top two running backs, Rasul Faison and Oscar Attaway, combined for 25 yards rushing last week. So for all of the things they did offensively in outgaining the Tide and leading them into the fourth quarter, there is still not the kind of productivity they're getting out of the backfield like they got out of Rocket Sanders in years past and some others. They just don't have that running back who's established himself as a counterbalance. And Rocket Sanders last year, that was a really big part of the story because they developed a home run hitter that really complemented Sellers out of the backfield as well.
Absolutely. Just by the nature of the schedule, South Carolina does not have a lot of road games this year. They have obviously had that neutral site game to begin the season, a lot of home games, but now going on the road for the third time. The road has not been unkind to this team. You mentioned that LSU game. It was a close ball game. Also, the Missouri game was a close ball game as well. How do you think they'll handle the stakes now, once again, going on the road against a top 10 opponent?
Yeah, it's tough. And, in Oxford, they've got to be kicking themselves. They had that game won between the hedges, and they'd be, a top 3 or 4 team right now, probably, depending on what else happened. And then you got an open date. Then you got to go to Texas A&M. I still think Texas A&M is an excellent team, but I'm anxious to see how it plays out for them over the next few weeks. So you don't know where they'll be because it's a few weeks down the road, but those are 2 brutal road games. That guy right there has talked over and over again. This is what we're about. Best league in the country. You sign up to come play in these massive stadiums against the best teams in the world on the college level and get you ready for the NFL and to get you high exposure. You got to go against coaches like that from an offensive mind, Kiffin, and coaches like that from a defensive mind, Venables. They're seeing those 2 head coaches during this stretch. It's really tough right now. You look back, and again, the Vanderbilt game at home, the Missouri game on the road, put those in the win column, and then figure out a way to close the deal against Alabama, and you've got a whole different vibe, and you're thinking about 8 or 9 wins potentially, which against the schedule they had this year would be really good. They got Coastal Carolina, which is, not been great this year, and I'm not so sure they've got a run to the Sun Belt title in them. They did get a big win against App State, and they are playing Thursday of this week. And you got the arch rival coming to your place, and by then, Clemson's got enough talent they can win anywhere, and they may have figured out whatever bumps in the road they've had offensively and get a little bit more productivity out of places on defense that they're hoping to get. But, that could be a game when you look at Clemson's schedule ahead and when you look at South Carolina and how the seasons are going, it really could be for a bowl bid on the line, which we have not seen for both teams in that game for years and years.
Absolutely. One quick yay, nay, or TBD on coaches before we go to Clemson really quickly. Shane Beamer and Mike Shula, will they be on campus next season? Yay, nay, or to be determined?
Shane Beamer says his dream job is the one he's in at South Carolina. Shane Beamer is also the son of the legendary Virginia Tech head coach and the athletic director who's come in and gotten some positive things going and has supported the head coach that he inherited. But that's not the athletic director that hired Shane Beamer, and that's the reality of the world. But things appear to be going fine in that relationship, regardless of how this season has been going. However, there's a term that coaches often use, restarting your clock, and it may just be a reality, particularly if the census of Lenora Sellers decides to try to make the jump. They've got a pretty good guy in Cutter Woods waiting in the wings, but it may be a situation where Shane Beamer would love to continue on at South Carolina, but just may find the realities of a potential, and I have no idea if Virginia Tech is even on, if they have him on the radar, it makes sense, but it's an obvious conclusion. But Shane Beamer says he is in his dream job, so you would suppose if the opportunity is to continue in that and he feels confident that he can get back to the kind of winning he's done a very good job at South Carolina. But that's a really tough one. I hate to be milquetoast on you.
No, I get it.
But I just know that the realities are, yes, maybe Virginia Tech is the proper landing spot at this time. But at the same time, I think he wants to be successful at a place where, one of the great home atmospheres in the country. And you can win there. Steve Spurrier showed it with an assistant named Shane Beamer. And Beamer's had some good seasons. Mike Shula, great question. from South Carolina's standpoint. Deshaim determined that, maybe he needs to bring in yet another offensive coordinator, Marcus Satterfield, Dow Loggins, Mike Shula. Is it time for a change there? I think Shula, conversely, it's probably 50-50 because there will probably be some NFL opportunities, and he may look at it as the way things are in college. One thing to go get an NFL free agent to fill a hole because you've got your quarterback under contract because he's your franchise guy or under contract, and you've got wide receivers you've just signed or whatever, stability, as opposed to I've got to come up with a playbook next year, and this kid may have gotten a better NIL offer I was counting on, and this running back, that guy. And interestingly enough, you may look at the pros as having a more stable roster management situation than you do the college ranks.
Absolutely. I mean, it would be really interesting to see how it all shakes out here in the offseason. Pete, thank you so much for your time today here on Southeast Sports Plus. My
pleasure, guys.
Absolutely. Pete Hannity out of Spartanburg, South Carolina. So I think a lot of college football fans wanted to know his thoughts on this because he's tied in with this program. I think the Mike Shula question will be the biggest one. There's been some protests on campus and stuff like that. There's been a lot of begrudging him, but he can make some hay, I think, in these last 5 or 6 weeks or so to be able to keep his job.
Yeah, and honestly, I think if it were Shula or Beamer to go, Shula's going to go before Beamer because I feel like the South Carolina faithful, like Shane Beamer, they wanted to work out for him. And just from what I've seen, a lot of hatred has kind of gone towards of Shula. I mean, dead last in points per game. Something's got to change there for South Carolina.
Right, and just like Pete said, it might be mutually beneficial if he just goes to the pros.
Yes.
Because he's obviously has ties to the pros as well, and he's been with a couple of franchises there in the course of his career. Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we headed to the other Columbia, and we'll talk some Missouri Tiger football next.
Welcome back in here to Southeast Sports Plus, closing up shop here on a Thursday as we take a look at the games this weekend. Obviously, the one that stands out to me right off the top there, number 9 Vanderbilt heading into Austin to take on the Texas Longhorns, and then Georgia and Florida. We let off the show with them. Can't call it the world's
largest outdoor cocktail party
anymore.
Can't
call it that anymore. And then moving right along here, Mississippi State and Arkansas, man, their fans, they don't even care about that game. They just can't wait for Monday.
Somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to win.
Somebody's going to win, but it doesn't matter because they're already thinking about basketball. And then South Carolina taking on Ole Miss there up in Oxford, and then rounding it out, Oklahoma taking on Tennessee, a big top 20 matchup. Could have huge college football playoff implications on the line there. And Kentucky and Auburn. Will we see the loser of that game fire their head coach on Sunday?
Should be really interesting. Very, very interesting. We always like to pick a couple of these games against the Vegas number here.
Yes, we do.
Which are the hot games this week?
Let's start it off. Vanderbilt at Texas. Texas 3.5-point favorites. Go.
I really like Texas there in that matchup at home. I think this is a prove-it game for them. I think they cover.
This is going to be a story of the underdogs here this weekend. I got Vanderbilt at least covering that 3.5.
Wow. Okay. Nice. Georgia, Florida. Georgia. It's It's a neutral site game. Florida will be the home team
Yes.
in that matchup there. Who do you like there between the Bulldogs and the Gators?
I just said I like the underdog. I really like DJ Lagway upsetting the Georgia Bulldogs. Florida at least covers 7.5, but I might take a money line.
Sprinkle some of that on that money line. That's very interesting. Next up, the Tennessee Volunteers back at home against Oklahoma. Slim number there.
Yeah, I think I got to go again with the underdog here. That Tennessee defense is too suspect. We talked about it earlier in the week on our contender-pretender. We did Tennessee this week, and honestly, the defense is just too much of a liability. I think the Oklahoma defense will contain Joey Aguilar, and I think John Mateer bounces back.
I saw some holes in that Oklahoma defense. Holden talked about that as well.
Yeah.
I think those holes that Lane Kiffin poked will be exploited by Josh Heupel and company. I like Tennessee. I just now noticed I didn't give my Georgia line. I like Georgia as well. So I have 3 favorites, which I don't really like because it feels very like a public thing to do, but 3 favorites so far.
And then South Carolina going into Oxford, taking on number 7 Ole Miss, 12.5-point favorites there. I think I gotta stay with Ole Miss.
See, this is where I go with the dog in this one. This game reminds me of what the South Carolina-Bama game was last week, where you could see a little bit of a pullback after Oklahoma got that big win on the road. I could see some pullback. Lenora Sellers making this interesting, at least covering the number, but Ole Miss wins the game.
And then finally, the one that we talked about earlier on the show this week, and we were just shocked at this number. Kentucky at Auburn. Auburn 11.5-point favorites. Go.
I don't see Auburn beating anybody by 11.5 points, but I have a motto on this show. When the line doesn't make sense, you just go with the side that doesn't make sense. A brand new quarterback starting in this game, if Ashton Daniels does get the start in this game, it doesn't make sense, but I have to go with my own thesis. I got to go with the Auburn Tigers because, to me, giving up 11 points, it's a lot to Kentucky.
Look, I mean, I think I talked about it yesterday. It felt like Hugh Freeze opened the door, and this is Ashton Daniels' job until the rest of the year, unless Hugh Freeze wants to throw Jackson Arnold out there because he beat Alabama last year in the last game. I feel like the Auburn defense is just not going to allow a touchdown the whole game. I think I said 2 field goals at most.
Right, so like 6
I just
points,
don't.
and then Auburn scores 20 or so.
Look, Kentucky played a terrible Tennessee defense. Let's just put it straight like that. And then they only scored 13 against Texas, and Texas has a really good defense, but I think Auburn has a better defense. I like Auburn 11.5, and those are my 5 picks. Those are your 5 picks. We'll keep track. We'll come back on Monday
for sure,
and we'll see who won.
I like it. That closes things up for us here on Southeast Sports Plus. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again here on Monday from 2 to 4.